In Jesus' parable this morning, we heard about how a landowner planted good seed in his field. And while people were sleeping, an enemy came and planted weeds among the wheat and then went away. And when the stalk sprouted and bore grain, then the weeds also appeared. The thing about weeds is that they don't just grow in peace and they leave what was meant to be there alone. As they grow, they choke out some of the life of the plants surrounding them, and they inhibit the growth of the plants surrounding them. And as anyone who has ever gardened knows, the best thing to do is to pull these weeds right out. Amen? You pull them out. You don't even worry about it. But when the landowner's servants ask their master if they should cull the weeds, the master says no. No. The reason being is that pulling up the weeds would pull up the wheat as well, and to destroy one would be to destroy the other. And Jesus taught in verse 30 to let both grow side by side until the harvest. And at harvest time, I'll say to the harvesters, first gather the weeds and tie them together in bundles to be burned, but bring the wheat into my barn. Now, the owner understands that once they are intermingled, the weeds and the wheat must grow together so that none are destroyed. And though this parable really does seem to describe a them versus us situation, a wheat versus weeds situation where we're really, really tempted to fill in who are the evildoers, the weeds, and who are the children of the kingdom, the wheat. Don't tell me you didn't do that when you heard the story, because I did it when I heard the story. We have to remember that we are all in this world together. Whether that world consists of our whole planet, our country, our community, or our congregation, we have to remember that we are all in here together, intermingled with one another, and we cannot hurt one without hurting another. We cannot hurt one without also hurting ourselves. Amen? We have to remember that we must all grow together and allow God to worry about how to separate the wheat from the weeds in their own time. Because just as the wheat and the weeds need each other to survive once they're mixed in together, we would also do well to remember that we all need one another to survive. But God will sort it all out. Jesus says that God will send their angels to gather out of his kingdom all things that cause people to fall away and all people who sin, and he will throw them into the burning furnace, and people there will be weeping and grinding their teeth. So while God does watch over us all, we have to face the consequences of our actions. I have heard it said, well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions. My nemesis. If we make bad decisions that put us in a bad place, that put us in a bad spot, then we will have to deal with the fallout of the actions that we took. God will be there to support us, make no doubt about that. God will support us and give us strength while we deal with it, but deal with it we must. If one sows hatred and discord, that is what one will reap. If one makes bad financial decisions, then bad finances they will reap, and so on and so forth. And while it's tempting to want to dig up those we see as weeds, while it's tempting to dig up those that we see as our adversaries, as our opposition, as those who get in the way, it seems, of God's own work, those we see sowing discord and oppressing their neighbors, it's good to remind ourselves that no one is ever just one thing. There is no one sitting here who can say that they have not been a weed at some point in their lives. There is no one sitting here who can say that they are really, really great in some respects, and in other respects, as we grow and as we learn, we have room for improvement. Amen? We have some neighbors who we disagree with on just about every stance you could possibly imagine when it comes to being a citizen of this great nation, but they take great care of their cats. There are some of us who still go back and forth between being a stalk of wheat and being a weed, depending on the circumstances of our lives and the decisions that we make. And I give to you, for example, Jacob from the book of Genesis. For those of you who don't know Jacob's story, well, I'll tell you what, I do believe that the content of Jacob's story would make for a great limited series on Netflix. It's got the makings of a great soap opera. It's got the drama. And what we read this morning was Jacob sleeping by himself out in the wilderness because he was running from his older brother. And for those of you who don't know his story, Jacob was running from his older brother because he had just deceived their father and had stolen his older brother's rightful inheritance. Just as the enemy in Jesus' parable had essentially stolen the landowner's good wheat crop. Jacob was a weed at this point in his life, and as a direct result of his actions, Jacob's life was one that was filled with struggle. He had to work twice as long as agreed upon for his inheritance, to marry the woman that he loved. Jacob had to continuously fight and struggle for everything that he had, for all of the goods that he acquired in his lifetime, and at every turn, he had to prevent being swindled himself numerous times. He had to avoid having the same thing happen to him multiple times, the same thing that he had done with his father and with his brother, deceiving them and taking what was not rightfully his. And this could be seen as divine justice. How many of y'all have seen people reap what they sowed and thought, Yeah, it happens. It happens. This could be seen as divine justice. But Jacob's journey is where he learned the lessons that he needed to learn so that he did not repeat the same mistakes of his youth, the mistakes that caused him to be a weed in the first place. And the difficulties in Jacob's future, they would act just as a burning hot furnace. As he learned the lessons he needed to learn, he would be formed into the person that he was born to be. He would be changed from a weed into someone righteous, just as a metal maker will put impure metals into the fire. And what happens? The impurities separate from the metals until they are left with pure metal, whether it be gold or whatever it is. The heat was turned on in Jacob's life from the time he ran away for many, many years. And in the scene that we read in Genesis this morning, Jacob had stopped to rest in running from his brother, and he had a dream of angels ascending and descending a ladder from heaven. Even as a weed, he had a dream sent from God that not only would he understand that he would overcome the difficulties that he was and would be facing as he reaped what he sowed from the consequences of his own actions, but that he would also be guided by the divine throughout his entire journey. He would be guided and he would be protected as he reaped what he sowed, as he learned his lessons, as he took step by step from becoming the person he was to the person that he was meant to be. And this was promised to someone, God promised this to someone who had just committed an atrocious crime against his own brother. God will work with them continuously. God does this for all their children, and God will work with them continuously without fail to turn them from weeds into wheat, because the Spirit of God is with us and leads us day by day. And God right now claims us all as their own and is with us this very moment and goes with us wherever we go. And God does all of this for all of us, for the weeds and the wheat alike, because as any parent with more than one child knows, Just because one child hurts the other does not mean that you love them any less. Amen? Amen? Just because your child, one of them hurts the other, does not mean that you love them any less. No, as a matter of fact, you attempt to correct them. You attempt to redirect them. You attempt to help them grow into the person that they were born to be. God does with that with all of us right now in this global community that we live in. As we follow the example of Christ, as we do the work of God in this world, we must keep in our mind that the weeds that we come across is just a reflection of ourselves at one point in our lives when we had not yet gotten to where we are now. Lord, that's hard. That is so hard to do, but we have to keep in mind that the weeds are just a reflection of how we once were and how we can sometimes still be. And God will continue to work with them. God will continue to work with us until there are no more enemies, until swords are made into plowshares, until the hatred and the jealousy and the greed and oppression are all melted away, and that all that is left is a world of siblings who love one another in a way that ensures that all are cared for. Amen.